Alright, so like in any other project, I like to start by collecting some references and some images that either inspire me or that I can literally use to refer back to and create whatever object I'm going to create based on those images. I also like to do a couple of like very rough and very simple thumbnails, sometimes with just black and white to explore values. In this case, I've done a couple of very, very rough sketches, like little thumbnails with color, just to explore ideas of what I want to create, which is, I landed in something like that. This is kind of like what we're going to try to do. And the idea is to create this sort of retro sci-fi prop or machine. I don't know exactly what this could be for, kind of like an incubator type of thing, or analyzing some kind of like creature or something that might be inside this orb here. So this is just the project that I choose to do because it will allows us to explore a couple of things in the tool that I'm going to show you, which is 3D Modeler. So let's go ahead and jump into that. By the way, just before I do that, I have also collected some 3D printers and things that look quite sci-fi, but I'm going to try to go for this sort of like retro look with this sort of plasticky, almost like a dirty, vintage all plastic stuff. So that's the idea. We're gonna combine a bit of everything, but yeah, hopefully that's gonna give you enough information so that we can, at least you know what I'm aiming for. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, so here we are in Substance 3D Modeler. I'm currently using the beta version because I want to show you some of the really cool tools that are coming up. Maybe by the time that you watch this series, this is not going to be a beta anymore, but I think it's going to show you like the potential and the power of this tool. I'm going to be showing you this in a desktop mode, which is currently what I have, and then I'm going to jump into the VR mode just to show you some other things. All right, so I'm going to click on this just to get out of them. And there are two main things that I want to show you. So the first one is the clay tools, which is basically what you have in here. So it's like by default selected. You can press a spacebar, and that's basically locking in a shape. So if I press a spacebar and I hold it, and I can just drag this along, I'm basically creating the geometry, right? And I can hold the Alt key and left mouse button to rotate around, middle mouse button holding Alt to pan around, and Alt and right click to zoom in and out. So pretty straightforward and pretty basic navigation. So let's go ahead and undo that, because like I said, this is just the clay tool. Now the cool thing with this is that, for instance, you can select a cube, and let me just get closer here. All right, so with these shapes, the cool thing as well is that you can edit them before you decide to add them. So you can taper that, you can round it up, you can fill it, you can combine multiple of these like settings to create something very interesting. And once you're happy with this, you can press a spacebar, and that will sort of lock it in. If I rotate around, you see there's like a coplanar material there. That is just because right now the software has an instance of what I just dropped in, and I'm still adding more. So if I move this around, I can press a spacebar again, and I'm dropping another one, spacebar again, right? So that is the cool thing about Model. Now, another really cool thing about Modeler is that you can very easily add, subtract, or intersect shapes, right? So you can go ahead and, let's say, scale this one up. Let's go ahead and reset it actually. So I'm going to click on reset. So we have more of this. And this time I'm going to press the tab on my keyboard. There we go. So the tab on your keyboard basically sends the whatever you have selected, you see here, to the erase mode. So the erase mode, if I press spacebar now to lock in that shape there, is going to delete that section, right? So let me undo that. Let's reset it again. I can reposition this maybe like so. We can also use these white dots here to scale non-proportionally. I'm going to press a spacebar. So I just basically deleted that. Let's go back to the selection tool. And now we have these very simple, very interesting shapes, right? The other thing that you can do, let's go back to the eraser again, or you can use the clay tool and then simply press tab to go back here. I'm going to use maybe the capsule, right? Just to show you something else. Make sure I reset this. And let's go ahead and click on this one, this little dot here. This is going to scale things proportionally, right? And I'm gonna push this one around there. And you'll see here from the erase tool, instead of using the one that I just did to remove this, right? I'm gonna click on this one. And this is going to be the split tool, which is fantastic for adding panels or more complexity to your models. So with this one selected, I'm gonna press a spacebar, and you'll see it doesn't delete anything. But if I go back to selection, you'll see that it sort of like cuts through the model and it just, yeah, basically changes or cuts the panel. So this is a really, really powerful way to create complexity and, you know, build the shapes. So those are the basics of the clay tool. Let's go ahead and delete all of this because the other really powerful tool are the primitives or the non-destructive primitives. And those are the reason why I'm using this open beta. So I'm gonna right click and you'll see you have access to add clay. So that's the same thing as clicking on here, or you can click on the second button, which creates a primitive. So if I click on that one, you have like very similar tools. Let's go ahead and use the cube, and you'll see it has like this sort of like planes, and all of the tools that we had for the clay are grayed out. Now the idea with this is that you can modify a bunch of different things. So let's go ahead and click on settings here, or the properties, and you have like the same thing that I showed you before with clay. So you can taper it, you can round it up, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and just leave it as a maybe with a bit of fillet and round it, something like that, right? And we can also maybe squash it down like so. And that's it, right? I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna keep it very simple for this intro, and I'm gonna right click and add another one. So let's click on this one, and this time I'm gonna select a cylinder, right? And immediately, as you can see, it is being added, so it like kind of like fused together. And this is kind of like the amazing thing of this tool, that as you add it, it is being blended together. So I'm gonna push this up, maybe scale it down like so, right? And then I have this blending tool. So if I push this one, you see how nicely this is blended together. That is one of the most amazing things about this tool, right? So I can just do something like that. Maybe right click, and instead of adding another one, I can duplicate the same cylinder. I'm gonna click on that, push that forward, scale it down like so. And instead of combining it, which is by default this icon right here, I can go ahead and click on subtract it. So now it's creating that hole, and I can reduce the blending so that it's a bit sharper here, right? And you see that there's like some, you know, artifacts or faceted polygons in here. This is basically the resolution of this primitive. So we can right click and we can increase the resolution. So I'm going to increase that resolution maybe a couple more times. Now that I have the NVIDIA RTX 4090, that is, you know, it just works like butter. So very, very cool stuff. Now on top of this one, you can add more complex stuff. Let's go ahead and right click and add let's say a capsule or a cylinder, doesn't matter. We can scale that like so. We can also rotate things, and if you hold the shift key, you can snap to these different angles. So let's select that one, let's push it up, and I'm just gonna try to intersect this in an interesting way, just to show you the capabilities of this before we start with the actual project. So I'm gonna subtract this, and we have a very nice and sharp object. I'm gonna go ahead and click on blend to blend it together, right? And that's it. So this is a very complex shape. I know it doesn't look like it, but it is actually a very complex to get like all these nice bevels and all this softness around the edges. And what's even more amazing is that you will be able to adjust this on the fly, right? And this is why I wanted to show you, because if you're not sure about this being so big or so tall, you can just go ahead and squish it down, push it in, and you know, it's maintaining that non-destructive workflow. Now, Model has an outline. If you click on this one, which shows you all the tools, and the red ones mean that they are subtracting. However, the whole philosophy of 3D Model, from what I understand, is to simplify the UI so that it keeps everything very, very simple. So you don't really need to use that outliner. Instead, you can just hover over the areas and you see them in red. So if I hover over this and click, it will select it. So I can just go ahead and scale it, maybe push it like so, in, and then I'm gonna select the other one, scale it up, and maybe push that up. So you see, in just a matter of seconds, with the same tools or the same kind of like objects that I have changed this quite a bit. And again, let's say this one right here, I can just go ahead and play with the blending again, or this one that I'm subtracting, I can also play with the blending, so it's a bit softer or a bit sharper. So it's totally up to you. All right, so now that I showed you some of the tools and the techniques that I'm going to be using throughout this video series, we can just go ahead and jump into more of like a fast-paced way of building the prop, or this retro sort of like a printer, or you know, whatever it is. But just one more thing before we move into the next video. When you have something like this, again, this is kind of like what we're trying to replicate here. It might feel like a bit too complex or a bit overwhelming to create all these details and all of the things that you see here. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of breaking down the larger shapes into the most simplest and primitive forms. So just to give you an example, let me just jump here into Photoshop really quickly. So what I have here, this sort of like side view, if I just go ahead and outline this as a, as a primitive thing, it is basically a cube, right? That's the equivalent to this bit from the front, right? So this is just to say that to start with this shape, we can simply start with a cube. We can just squish that that cube and we get the simple form. Then after that, once you have that, let's go ahead and add a cube here. And maybe I should have just make this a different color, like a green one, because these ones are like the positive values. So let's say that this is another cube that we can create in Modeler, and all we have to do is start figuring out the angles and the shapes that we can build with this. So we can take a cube like so, and we can remove that bit. We can duplicate that cube later and rotate it around again, and that creates that other sort of gap, and so on and so forth, right? So at the end of the day, we can just go ahead and use these cubes right here to erase or to remove this portion, and that creates that nice outline. Let's select this one. Yep, it will create that sort of nice outline for the shape. So I just wanted to cover this because these are the principles or the basics that I'm going to be using in the next video. So yeah, just keeping things very, very simple. The tools are very simple, very easy to use, but you can create a lot of complexity with this sort of like that principle of like subtracting and adding shapes. Very, very simple shapes as I just showed you. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.